Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature, picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels too. Whether you're an adult reading to your inner child or connecting the young readers in your lives with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. Each week, we'll talk to a different children's literature author and discuss their books, their hopes and dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. So, grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Ben Kahn. Ben is a critically acclaimed writer of comic books and novels and has worked with multiple publishers, including Dark Horse Comics, Scholastic, Simon & Schuster, Tokyo Pop, and Oni Press. Ben is here today to talk about their newest release, Mr. Muffins Defender of the Stars. According to Publishers Weekly Starred Review, this book is an enchanting space opera in which aliens and humans find common ground despite differing cultures, foods, and worlds, and learn the true meaning of home. I can't wait to dive into this one, so let's get right to the episode. Ben, welcome to KidLit Love. I'm so glad you're here today.
And I am so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. I am so excited to be here and talk comics and Kidlit and Mr. Muffins.
Yeah. All things that sound like we're going to have a lot of fun today.
Yes, if you've been looking for cosmic corgi adventures, we have made a book just for you.
That's right. That's right. I'm a huge dog lover, Ben. I have too many of them. I have 5. And
Oh,
so
that sounds like the perfect amount.
yeah.
That's the correct amount of dogs.
When there is a book that just embraces that dog lover and there's something really special with this particular corgi, it was definitely fun even for this, especially I would say for this adult to read. But
I am so glad because that was just such a big thing I wanted to do was just that relationship between human and pet and how meaningful that bond is.
Yeah. Yeah, which I'm hoping we can touch upon a little bit later too. But before we get to the book, I want to get to you. I would love for you to give us a bit about you, a bit about your background, your comics, your books, all of the things that brought you here today talking about Mr. Muffins.
Yeah, so my kind of foundation was in game design before I transitioned over to comic book writing. Gotten to work with some absolute wonderful artists. I'm the writer, so I get to put the words on the page, but I have gotten to work with been very blessed to work with some absolutely incredible artists who bring these books to life. Artists like Bruno Hidalgo, Sam Beck, and Giorgio Brooks, who I have now done 2 collaborations with. We did the video game tie-in to video game tie-in, the comic book tie-in to the video game, Immortals: Phoenix Rising, which was published by Dark Horse and was this really fun Greek mythology adventure. And Giorgio and I kept the comics train going and with work on Mr. Muffins. And in the meantime, I've gotten very lucky to just work on a whole bunch of different, really fun projects. I got to work with Tokyo Pop on doing a manga prequel to the Captain Laserhawk animated series on Netflix, where I got to work with show creator Adi Shankar on expanding the world and the characters, which was an incredibly cool experience. I I worked with co-writer Rachel Silverstein and artist Sam Beck on Renegade Rule for Dark Horse, which was nominated for a GLAAD Award. It's about that one's about an all queer girl pro gaming team fighting to become virtual reality champions. And it is I've been very delighted the way libraries and schools have really picked up on it, and I'm so glad we could just tell that adventure. And I also got to dip my toe into prose. I worked with Scholastic on my prose debut, L. Campbell Wins Their Weekend, which is a middle grade novel about a non-binary seventh grader escaping from Saturday detention with the help of their best friends to meet their celebrity hero who inspired them to come out. So kind of updated Ferris Bueller's Day Off suburb
Yeah.
adventure. And that has all, and I've, gotten to work lately. Before Mr. Muffins, my previous release this past December was I got to do a winter dance romance one-shot issue for the current Monster High comic book series, Monster High Holiday Haunt. So I got to put on my romance hat and put on a playlist full of 2000s love songs and just have myself a fun romantic time with those Monster High characters. And now I get to do outer space doggy adventures with Mr. Muffins, Defender of the Stars.
That is a lot. That is a lot of varied, creative, just really amazing projects that you get to have your hands in.
I love to write. I love storytelling.
Yeah.
It'd probably be better for my career if I could stay focused on a particular lane, but I'm a greedy writer, and I want to write it all. Every genre for every age range.
Yeah. You know, I have thoughts about that because I know I've talked with a lot of authors on the podcast, and there is this talk about staying in your lane or finding your niche or your niche or what's your brand, so to speak, as a writer, like trying to figure out where you belong. But I find it so appealing and so helpful to me that when an author that I love is multi-passionate, like I am a multi-passionate reader, because I find like if I find an author and I love them, I will follow them. And so that as a reader makes my world grow, and I might read something that I didn't. And so I love that you've got a little bit of everything here because it helps you, I'm sure. But as a reader, I think that's a really special connection readers can make to authors.
I approach every project as a chance to take in new influences, uh, take inspiration from different things, play around with different genres I'm interested in, different storytelling devices and character types I want to play with. Every project is a chance to remix a whole bunch of different pieces from a whole bunch of different puzzles to make something new and cool.
Yeah.
And you never know where you'll get your inspiration from. I've had instances where a romantic comedy did a very interesting little storytelling technique, and I kept that in mind, and that influenced a cyberpunk story that I wrote. So you
Yeah.
just, you know, as a writer, I think there's a lot of benefits to just having a wide variety of interests and influences and places you can pull from,
Yeah.
more. I don't believe in rules of writing. I believe in writing as building, as tools for building.
Mhm. Mhm. I like that. Tools for building, because that is exactly what you're doing, especially when we get to talk about Mr. Muffins, right? There is a whole new world that readers get to jump into. As Publisher Weekly said, it's an enchanting space opera, right?
I
And
mean, this is a book where the influences I combined are Where the Red Fern Grows, Air Bud, Homeward Bound, Star Wars, and Dragon Ball Z.
yeah, yeah, that's and it just kind of wrapped all together. So
Yep.
how do you do that though? Like how do you sit down, because this is so different from how my brain works. I'm not a very imaginative, creative person, and I'm working on it. I'm working on it. But how do you create these new worlds, these visual, gosh, masterpieces in your mind? And I know you work with someone to bring it to life visually, but How do you go about pulling all those influences and making this? I'm just fascinated by the process you must have.
Part of it's just, sometimes my brain just feels like this endless, repository for just endless pop culture
Yeah.
knowledge. So it's so much being like, ooh, I love that sky, the way that sky looked in that one movie. What if the sky just looks that way all the time on this alien world?
Yeah. So your brain's always going. It's
Oh,
always
constantly,
thinking.
always going. But again, I do have to give so much credit to the artists I work with. And part of it's thinking, is thinking about where, sometimes the world, like, what am I trying to say with the world? What
Mhm.
influences can I pull from this world to make sense? So, I worked with, for Scout Comics, I made a series called Heavenly Blues with artist Bruno Hidalgo that took place in heaven and hell. And one of our goals was to make them feel like, was to make those heaven and hell, mythological places feel like real, tangible locations. So for hell, like we started looking at a lot of, we pulled some different references and examples. So we took like kind of the claustrophobic buildings built on top of buildings feel of the favelas of Rio de Janeiro, but
Yeah.
we also combined it with kind of this barren landscape under like the burning red sun you might see in more like Arizona, like American Northwest. And then for heaven, we base it more on like a mixtures of Paris, New like Manhattan, and Las Vegas, where our influences like
Yeah.
this very opulent, elegant place that nevertheless feels a little artificial and like a playground.
Yeah.
So a lot of like trying to figure out what you're trying to accomplish with the story, and then not necessarily starting with the influences and inspiration, but figuring out what you're trying to accomplish with a location, with a setting, and working backwards to figure out what pieces you have rattling around in your memory to put together to make the most evocative to best accomplish that goal.
I think that's a perfect segue to jump into Mr. Muffins and to talk about it specifically. So it's Mr. Muffins, Defender of the Stars. Fantastic reviews, as I've already mentioned in the opening, and a book that even this self-proclaimed not very creative adult had a blast jumping
Uh,
into.
I'm so glad you had fun with it because
I
that
did.
that was the goal, to just make a book that people would smile and laugh and go "aw" while reading.
Yeah. Yeah. And as an educator, a former educator, I worked with a lot of kids who either had difficulty reading or were reluctant readers. And so giving them a book that really transports them into a world that they can just have incredible amounts of fun in, it reached them more than, let's say, some of your typical books. And so I feel like this could be such an entry point for so many readers who may be on the fence.
Oh, that would be so wonderful.
Yeah, until they get your book. So tell listeners, for those that don't know about Mr. Muffins yet, give us a little overview of what the book is about and maybe the inspiration behind it and what you
Yes.
were trying to say.
So Mr. Muffins, Defender of the Stars, is about 11-year-old Ruben Mahmoud, an 11-year-old slacker who just wants to avoid homework and spend a day at the park with his best friend and corgi, Mr. Muffins.
Yeah, I mean, who
Uh,
can't relate to that, right?
right. He is 11 years old at that age where he still feels entirely like a kid, but more and more responsibilities are starting to be heaped upon him and expected of him. Who hasn't had that, who can't relate to those memories,
Exactly.
even adults of having way too much homework on top of practice that you didn't want, but your parents signed you up for, and family obligations for people you barely know.
Absolutely.
But that day at the park is interrupted by a crashing spaceship and a teenage alien who declares that she has tracked the spirit of light, the new host, found the cosmic chosen one that is destined to save the universe is Mr. Muffins, the corgi.
Yep.
So Reuben, Mr. Muffins, and this alien, Lieutenant Kasara, all take off to outer space to fight off the dreaded Hakar Armada and save the universe and get belly rubs and a treat for being the best boy.
Fun. That's what it is, right? That's what
Yeah.
I said. It was a lot of fun. I think one of my favorite parts is in the beginning when the 11-year-old slacker will say is like, "Oh, me? I'm the chosen one?" Like, "Oh my gosh, like no, not you, the dog."
I just wanted to, because I, who doesn't love a good chosen one fantasy
Right.
narrative? But there's so much like, the person who's struggling with life, going through that coming of age,
Yep.
and it's like you're the chosen one.
Yep.
You're the one we've all been waiting for. And I just thought that, like, how much more fun would that be if it's like, what if it was your dog though?
Yes. Yeah.
Nah, nah, Rex the good boy is the magic one we've all been waiting for.
Yeah.
Uh, the original inspiration for it, while that's very quickly what it became, this kind of satire or twist on the chosen one narrative. Because why wouldn't dogs be chosen ones? They're the
Right.
best. They have dogs have every quality you would want in a chosen one. But the original inspiration was just, I had a long 30-minute walk to work when I first came up with this idea. So I had lots of time to just be in my head, imagining all sorts of silly things. And an image just popped into my head that was essentially like, what if Star Wars, but instead of Luke Skywalker in an X-Wing, it's a corgi?
Yeah.
And I told this image that, and I told this image to enough people and friends who responded with, "That's adorable and fun. You should make that for
Yep.
real." That I then went, "Oh, okay." So I did so.
Right.
But no, and again, just this image where I'm like, how fun would it be if there was a story that was like, instead of Goku or Luke Skywalker or whichever chosen one, it's a corgi.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that
And
was just the genesis for everything.
I love that. And I love that it's relatable too, because there are a number of readers who could quite possibly have a corgi in their home, or lots of readers who have dogs in their home and could just completely relate to, oh my gosh, how fun would that be if,
I
and just take that
definitely
with.
hope that this book gets people like daydreaming about going on adventures with their own pets.
Yes.
Unless you have a cat. That cat doesn't want to go on adventures. That cat wants to stay at home and nap.
That's right. Do you have dogs? Have you always loved the dog,
I I
childhood?
have. I grew up with dogs. I grew up with a big chubby yellow cockapoo named Renegade, who I adored even as he inhaled everything in the house that was
Oh,
edible
yes.
or even non-edible.
Uh-huh.
But yes, he was my childhood dog. I absolutely loved him. And that bond that I remember that, wanting a dog so badly and being so happy and just, he was the best. And so that bond definitely informed it. Now as an adult, I live in New York City, don't really have a yard or anything like that. So we have a cat, who I also love so, so much. But that cat, his name is Blargy, and he is my first like pet as an adult, and really the first time taking care of an animal.
Hmm.
I had my dog, but my mom was the one
Yeah.
walking him, feeding him, taking him to the
Yeah.
vet. And so taking care of Blargy really was really my journey, and realizing, having a pet, it's not all just the cute photos and the
It's
snuggles. It's like
not.
like you have a responsibility to this animal. This animal is going to trust you with everything, and you got to take that responsibility seriously. And you owe a lot to and you owe a lot to this cat or dog you're
Yeah.
welcoming into your family. So that very much inspired a lot of the themes of responsibility and Ruben learning what it means to really take care of his loved one, Mr. Muffins.
Yeah. And while the book really is a great deal of fun, as you mentioned, there are deeper themes there that the reader is taking in. Responsibility being one of them, that treasured relationship between a pet and owner is another one. And what I kept thinking too, as I was reading, because of that initial part in the book that I love so much, where he thought it was him as the chosen one. It turns out it's actually his dog. It just made me keep thinking, you never know someone's inside story. You never know what's on the inside. You never know the potential, the possibilities that are on the inside. And I couldn't help but thinking about that, not just for my dogs, but for myself, for my kid, for all of us. It was such a fun metaphor, I think, for me to think about of, what is on the inside, and who knows of the people around us. So I really enjoyed that aspect that
Oh,
I
I'm so
personally
glad.
took away. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had so much fun with that. Also, just the idea that if you're not the chosen one, the next best thing is your dog being the chosen one.
Yes. Yeah. And soaking it up that way.
Yes. Uh, but yeah, no, I mean, and that because that is kind of Ruben's journey is that he's kind of being these responsibilities that he doesn't understand being foisted on him. Uh,
Right.
but the responsibility that he does instinctively understand is that he needs to look out for Mr. Muffins.
Yeah.
And then the way that ends up being the bridge to his character arc throughout the book.
Yeah. Yeah. It fun, enjoyable, but also lots of good stuff to think about.
I mean, my attitude going into this was it's going to be a kid's book. This is unapologetically a kid's book,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean we need to be talking down in any way to the audience. We
Right.
don't need to be dumbing down the humor. We don't need to dumb down the story. We don't need to simplify the themes. Just because these are kids doesn't mean these aren't sophisticated readers who understand what they're reading.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to go like trust trust your readers to understand the jokes you want to tell, to go along and to understand the messages below the surface.
Yeah.
Because just because they're kids doesn't mean they don't deserve a world of credit from their stories.
Yeah. They always rise to the occasion.
Yes,
Always. If we give them the opportunity, I have always found that readers rise to that occasion.
exactly. Which is why there's a general relativity joke in this book for kids.
Right.
Maybe it'll have them Googling like, what's general relativity? Oh, E
Right.
equals MC squared. Now I'm
Yeah.
watching a video about Einstein.
That's
Because
right. You never know where it goes.
that was how I learned. That's how I learned stuff as a kid. I like something would be referenced in a book and I'd look it up, or I'd see a word that like I didn't know and I'd look up its definition and now I knew what it meant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I still do that all the
yeah.
time with the books that I read.
And that's why until my mid, but sometimes it means you only know the spellings and not the actual pronunciations, which is why up until my mid 20s, I thought it was pronounced epitome.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know, right? You don't know what you don't know
Yes,
until you have
exactly.
something that gives you that spark. And books
Yes.
definitely do that. Now, how do you go about? I know you are the words side of the book, and you worked with some amazing illustrators, amazing comic creators. How do you go about that process of kind of visualizing, I imagine, the world in your mind and getting the story how you want it? How do you work together then with someone to actually bring it to life in this way?
It definitely helps. Because I got to go into Mr. Muffins. I got to go into the script writing process knowing that Giorgio was going to be the artist.
Okay.
We teamed up very early on. I met him. I saw his artwork at SPX, the Small Press Expo in near Washington, D.C. I knew it was the exact art style that would be perfect for this book. So I reached out to him and we teamed up for the pitch. So it was very helpful for me that I got to go into this story, into the script writing process, already like having his style in mind.
Right.
Not to say he didn't surprise me in so many ways and made everything so much better than I had imagined, but it was still very helpful that I was able to go in already visualizing it like in his style. So definitely have like a bit of a chicken and an egg situation.
Right.
It depends on the story. So sometimes you'll have an artist you want to collaborate on, and you'll develop a story together. And there you'll be asking your artist, hey, what do you want to be drawing? What do you want to be working on? How can I tailor the story? Sometimes you'll have a story and you'll look for an artist whose style you feel matches what you're looking for.
Right.
If you're working on a pitch for a horror comic, you want to make sure you're reaching out to artists whose style fits
Yeah.
horror, what you're trying to do.
That's a good
Um,
point. Do you have a preference, like a one over the other that seems to work with you best, like starting collaboratively for the beginning or starting with you and then finding the right fit?
So typically I kind of go in like having an idea and try and put it together, looking around. Part of it's also not wanting to waste the collaborators' time, wanting to be able to come in and saying like, hey, I have this idea. I have all my ducks in a row. I have all my material. If you want to, if you like it and want to work on it, I'm ready to be offering paid work right now
Yeah.
versus like, hey, yeah, what's
Great.
up? Maybe if you want to do
Yeah.
something together.
Yeah.
So, my attitude is always, you know, these artists, these collaborators are professionals, and asking them for professional work means treating them like professionals.
Right.
So part of that means, at least for me, means being prepared with at
Hmm.
least when I reach out to ours. But definitely at that earliest of phases where you can be at a place where you can be like, hey, is there particular designs you want to draw, particular kinds of scenes you want to work on, like you want to be doing? If there's particular set pieces that you really want, like action set pieces that I should make sure to work into the story.
Yeah.
Like,
That
how
makes
are you envisioning the characters? What flaws in the world building are you seeing? I'll give a shout out to artist Sam Beck on Renegade Rule, on the Renegade Rule series. Rachel and I came up with the characters and the idea and approached Sam, and thankfully Sam said yes because her artwork is absolutely amazing and perfect for the story we're doing. But Sam really pushed us to develop the lore and the world building and the mechanics of it much more than we had. So, that was very much a case of the artist pushing us to be better writers.
Yeah. Does it ever make you, and this is totally just a selfish question I want to ask, does it ever make you like start sketching or attempt to draw or imagine what your world looks like? I imagine you writing, but then knowing all of that that's kind of going around in your brain that you're trying to collect. Do you ever try to represent it creatively or do you stay in your word lane?
So I truly am incompetent at drawing. Like I do not mean to sell myself short. I promise I truly am not a humble person. I will brag about my writing till kingdom come. I'm I'm pretty dang good in the kitchen. I can make some tasty meals. Uh but I truly, when they were sprinkling out the artistic talent, like they truly passed me over entirely. Uh, if I could draw, I would probably exclusively draw Pokemon if I'm being honest. That's been my hyperfixation since I was about 6 or 7.
Yeah.
But no, but it all lives in here very much. The way my writing, because even as a writer, especially for comics, where you need to be laying out the comics page and being able to verbalize it to a degree that an artist is able to
Hmm.
draw it. Uh, Even though I am completely physically incapable of expressing any of it through my hands, visually, it all lives here. Like, honestly, like, the way my writing process works, it's almost like needing to understand the characters completely, their voices completely, what I'm trying to accomplish in the scene, what needs to happen, what character or plot development we're trying to do. And then it's like putting a bunch of, I don't know, like you have a bunch of loose tracks, and once everything lines up perfectly correctly, It's like then the train starts going down the track and it's like a movie in my head.
Yeah.
And once it's just playing as a movie in my head, that's when I know I've got the scene. And then it's up to me to just write down as many details about this movie playing in my head as I can and figuring out what are the 4 to 6 specific images. So, like, cut out the frames of that movie scene that are necessary for the entire thing to play out. Like, look, the scene is playing in my head. Quick, write down every bit of dialogue that's happening in this scene because that's what the scene now requires, because that's what happened in the movie.
Yeah. I love that analogy. All the pieces coming together so that the track is laid, and then you can just run with it and tell
Yeah.
those words. I love that. This is why
Once,
I get so excited to have these conversations with authors, because I can totally get that. And now I can understand how, as a reader, taking this in, like you can feel that movie on the page.
ah,
And so to have it go from bits and pieces in your mind to the track to the page to the reader. Oh, I love that analogy. I'm going to be playing with that for a while.
I love it. I mean,
Brilliant.
my whole attitude is if I have fun writing it,
Mm-hmm.
that fun will probably seep down into the book, like to the
Yes,
reader. Like if I'm having fun writing it, hopefully someone will be having fun reading it.
absolutely. Which brings me then to another question is, what books are you having fun writing next? Can you give us any sneak peeks of some things that are
Y-
coming?
Yes, I absolutely can. So I am very lucky. I have teamed up with author Jeremy Whitley, author of Princeless, Raven Pirate Princess, Navigating with You, Dog Night, if you want more amazing dog comics. And we have an Unstoppable Wasp for Marvel, and we have teamed up with artist Melissa Capriglione for the Dashing School for Wayward Princes about a trans princess sent to a school for royalty to essentially teach them toxic masculinity.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
When can we expect that?
So I believe we don't have a definite release date, but I believe you can expect that either the end of 2025 or beginning of 2026.
Okay. And for listeners who want to find out more about you, who want to go through your backlist, be up to date on the things that are happening next, where's the best place to find you online and to connect with you?
Yes, if you want to sign up for my newsletter or go through and learn more or even purchase all of my older comics and novels, you can find all that on my website at benconcomics.com. You can find me on Instagram and Blue Sky, mostly Blue Sky these days, once again at benconcomics. And if you want to hear me ramble a whole bunch more, you can catch me, author Jeremy Whitley, and author Emily Martin every Friday on our podcast, Progressively Horrified, where every Friday we review and recap a new horror movie and analyze it through the lens of progressive politics.
Awesome.
And that is Progressively Horrified, wherever you do your podcast listening.
What a good name. I like that. I will put links to the podcast along with your social media handles, Instagram, and the books, of course, Mr. Muffins, and the show notes to make it easy for listeners to find as well.
Thank you so much.
So thank you for such a great conversation, Ben. This was a treat getting to know the backstory behind Mr. Muffins and how you pull it together and why I had so much fun as a reader. So thank you. Thank you so
Uh,
much.
I had an absolute blast. Thank you for chatting with me. I always love talking storytelling and comics and writing. And thank you to you and to everyone out there who reads Mr. Muffins. These stories, I love working on these stories, but knowing that they're reaching people and people are having fun with it, it truly, truly means the world. So thank you to everyone who picks up and gives Mr. Muffins a read.
Yes. And I will chime in and say thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of KidLit Love. And I will see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a bookish friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.